Hello and welcome to today's Franchise Minute. I'm Anna Wiles, the franchise economist. Here's the format of the next 15 minutes. We'll watch a 60-second video on today's topic, which is resale franchises, and then we'll have 15 minutes of live Q&A. And you can put your questions into the comments box, and I'll be glad to answer them. And let's just give other people who are joining the Franchise Minute a few more seconds, and we'll begin very shortly. And while we wait, put in the chat box or the comments section where you're located, where you're coming, where you're located, where you're joining us from. All right, we actually have somebody from the Philippines. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Looks like we have somebody from my hometown of Augusta, Georgia. All right, it's time now for us to show the Franchise Minute. Here we go. Hello, I'm Anna Wiles, the franchise economist. Today's topic is resale franchises. Whether exploring a new or existing franchise business, there are pluses and minuses to each. Here are 3 recommendations I have to take into account right away. First is, does the role of the owner fit well with how the buyer wants to spend his or her time on a daily basis? Secondly, does the potential new owner have the skills to be successful in the business? For example, if managing employees is necessary, does the new owner have the skills and experience for this? And lastly, can the person comfortably afford the franchise? Again, there are other important considerations to take into account, but these are the 3 biggest. To learn more about resales, contact me, Anna Wiles, the franchise economist. It's a very interesting topic. Some people do contact me and they're only interested in a resale. And there are, as you can imagine, pluses and minuses to going with a new business and going with a resale. So why don't we talk a little bit about that? And I'd be interested in what our audience has to say about what you think are some of the advantages of going with a resale. Pretty obvious are the fact that it's an existing business with employees in place and customers. So an ongoing revenue stream from day one. People find that very attractive. My kind of the flip side of that, or to me, disadvantages are, well, there's several. The first one to me is there's, of course, no guarantee that your employees will stay, that your customers will remain loyal, or even that key vendors will continue to work with the existing business. What I have noticed in my 20 years as a franchise advisor is that the heart and soul of most businesses is the owner. So when you remove that and just insert a new owner in, new relationships have to be built with the customers, with the employees, and with the vendors. That is not, a given. Then the other thing that's, again, what I think is obvious is people who are interested only in an existing business, primarily because it has an existing cash flow, maybe it can replace their current income or at least have enough income coming in from the business to cover their living expenses, and they plan to grow the business to a higher level. The way it usually works is the new buyer or the buyer is paying a multiple of that cash stream. So let's say it's generating $100,000 after expenses. Well, then typically, and again, typically, there are going to be exceptions to all of this, the owner wants to sell the business at a multiple of, say, 3 to 5 times that cash flow. So someone may potentially go into debt or invest some or all of their life savings into a business, pay 300,000, 400,000, or 500,000 for that current existing cash flow of $100,000. Whereas many of the franchises that I work with, $100,000, you can start off fresh with your own franchise, pick your employees, and grow the business and reap the benefits financially from the growth of the business. And of course, you're not paying a higher price for that business. But if cash flow is your main motivation, that's what most people are looking for. Now, there was someone named Brian, a senior executive that I'd worked with years ago, and Brian was used to making, high six figures, and he absolutely required a resale for him to be interested in a franchise. Here's what Brian encountered, and this is why, again, can be a negative for going with a resale, is the length of time that it takes to do the due diligence. You'll want to look at, the books. My understanding is, of course, you'll get your own financial advisor or accountant or lawyer to advise you, but my understanding is you'll want to look at 3 years of previous tax returns. You'll want to review any assets, equipment, computer systems, application software, that sort of thing. And here are 2 points I want to make about Brian's situation. It took Brian 9 months to do the due diligence process. Of course, you have to, look for all the skeletons in the closets, know where the closets are and where to look and all that sort of thing. And then the other thing is the equipment was old. He went with a sign manufacturing franchise, one of those like Signs Now, Sounds by Tomorrow signs, one of those franchises. He had to replace the outdated equipment. He had to replace the outdated computer systems, get new software, upgrade. Of course, he had to figure out who to keep and who to fire. The old employees weren't keen on learning the new equipment, the new computer systems, and the new software, the new CRM, and all that sort of stuff. Brian would had to have invested money in new equipment, new computer systems, and new technology anyway if he'd started new. And if he had started new, he could have hit break even by the time he took over the business. And certainly by the time he updated the equipment, the computer systems, and the software, and then fired who he needed to fire and hire who he needed to hire and train them and get them on board and producing for the business. But that was what Brian wanted. So in the same length of time and for less money, he could have started from scratch, handpicked his employees, and like I said, the equipment and all that sort of stuff, instead of fixing someone else's personnel problems, equipment issues, and that sort of thing, and then run the risk of not maintaining all the customers that he, that generate the income that he's buying. And what Brian ended up doing is, one location wasn't enough for his income needs. So he ended up within 90 days buying, I think he started off with a 2-pack, 2 sign manufacturing locations, and ended up buying a third very quickly. But some people like to be a turnaround artist. And if you do that, buying a resale, fixing the asset problems, the employee problems, and then launching and growing the business and taking it to the next level, that's exciting for some folks and that's their skill set. So if that's you, I say just as long as you're aware that it's going to be a much more complex discovery process and certainly a much longer process. And then the third thing that can be kind of a challenge is you can go through all of that for months and months and months and then not come to terms on the price. So with resales, the price is usually negotiable. And from what I've seen, there are 2 kind of businesses. They're the dogs, what I call the dogs, which are they never got to break even or barely got to break even or maybe never even launched. And so people can get into those businesses, maybe even less expensive than a brand new one. But again, you've got all those issues, or potentially some of those issues that I talked about, a more complex discovery process and due diligence process, negotiation of the sales price, and a more complex, longer, more complex, and then negotiating fees or sales price. But that can be very attractive to get into an existing business for less than a new one. Then another thing that I've seen with resales are what I call the cash cows. They are absolutely, cash flowing, strong businesses, but it's also the owner's baby that they've grown maybe over 20, 25, or 30 years. And what I've seen, they definitely value that business and they put a big old price tag on it, more like 5 times earnings than 2 to 3 times earnings. And a lot of times they're saying, yeah, if you pay me for it, then I'll let you have it. But a lot of times they're not really they're not really willing to step away from the baby that they've uh, grown and developed, and they put a nice hefty price tag on it, and it kind of wards away any would-be buyers. So it's just a challenge for all kind of reasons to find a resale. Another big point I want to bring up about that is, one, with any franchise, you need to do a discovery process to make sure it's the right franchise for you. Is the role of the owner going to fit how you want to spend your time on a daily basis? Can you comfortably afford it? And are you want to validate the business model, the marketing strategy, the systems, the training, the support, make sure all of that is a good fit and passes muster with you. And then in parallel to that discovery, then you're doing due diligence on an existing business at the same time. So you have to evaluate that business in your market or wherever it is that you're considering buying it, and realize that the new buyer, just like any new franchisee, has to be approved by the franchisor. And like any new franchisee, there is ongoing training and support to help the new franchisee when he or she takes over the business that's for sale. And that is very different. That's another contrast between independent businesses that are for sale. Maybe the owner will stay on for a few months to help the new owner transition, but for the life of the franchise agreement, usually about 10 years, they're going to get onboarded, they're going to go through training, and then there will be support and help throughout the tenure of the new owner's uh, length of time with the business. Okay, we've got time for about one more question. One thing that many people ask, are there any particular, franchises that lend themselves better to a resale than others? And all I can say is I just always see a lot of fast food restaurants for sale. And we all know how challenging, food concepts are. Uh, I'm not a big fan of food concepts. I'll admit that. I think that there are less risky and better profit margins with other businesses, especially service businesses, even though retail can be very attractive as well. Okay, time for me to sign off now. So what I'd like to do is thank you for being here and encourage you to come back next week for next week's Franchise Minute, which will be on the topic of B2B franchises. And I'm Anna Wilds, the franchise economist. See you soon.